Hello and welcome back to Sustainability Live London. We're having a great time today and hope you are too, whether you're watching via Brella or joining us from Business Design Centre in London. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker. We have Zbigniew Lewicki, who is the Chief R&D and Sustainability Officer of ekaterra, with a mission to enable regenerative growth. His personal purpose is to build regenerative food systems and create activist teams. He is a great believer in combining science and nature in order to unleash the power of plants to create the world of well-being for people and the planet. As a board member of Ethical Tea Partnership, he worked on the 2030 tea industry roadmap. Over the last 25 years, Zibby has worked in various parts of the world in food and beverages categories, including 13 years of vertically integrated tea business experience across SC, R&D, and ESG. He succeeded in building teams that drove growth through award-winning innovations for brands like Lipton, Tazo, Knorr, Magnum, Pure Leaf, and transformed portfolios towards healthier and more sustainable products. So please join me in welcoming him to the stage for his presentation titled Plant Powered to Become Planet Positive.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome to all. A great pleasure to be able to share some of the thoughts around how we can turn agriculture from net emitter of greenhouse gases to part of the future solution for Planet Positive. And let's start with the role of tea. Camellia sinensis is really a true magical plant with several benefits, health benefits, so positive for our health, where 1 billion cups is drank each and every day around the world. So the huge coverage, huge reach of this incredible crop. This is also a crop which is responsible for employment and well-being of 13 million people around the world, very often in countries which are poorer. And this is a crop which provides income and export revenues to those countries. As it happens, tea requires very specific agroecological conditions and therefore is vulnerable to climate change. So some of the statistics and inputs, according to many studies, 42% of tea in East Africa will be at risk of missing optimal growing conditions by 2050. The drought, the new pest diseases will be impacting the crop and therefore not only tea itself, but livelihoods. And within that, many, many women that work within the industry. As demand for tea grows, this will also pose competition for land and further increase the risk for reforestation. And finally, tea is a perennial crop, requires quite a lot of nitrogen. So how do we provide future science-based solution to make it less dependent and less carbon intensive? And this takes us to soil. Soil contains 2,500 gigatons of carbon, at least 3 times more than Earth's atmosphere, and 4 times more than all plants and animals. It's home to more than 25% of our planet's biodiversity. So solution actually literally could be underneath our feet. And by that we mean improving nutrient uptake, including water retention, and increasing biodiversity within this natural reservoir will be absolutely key to anything we consider regenerative agriculture. And from soil, I would like to reflect about ekaterra, where we came from. Ekaterra is a corporate startup, at the same time the largest tea company. And we consciously chose our name, spanning from eka in Sanskrit, meaning unity, a common goal, and Latin terra, Chinese natural, which really symbolizes our purpose and bringing together the impact that we would like to achieve. We are a vertically integrated business with tea operations in East Africa, indirectly connecting 100,000 people to it. So very big responsibility. And when we talk about our purpose to create the world of well-being through regenerative power of plants, it all starts with inherent goodness of tea and the fact that 20% of all calories today are consumed through sugary beverages. So actually we strongly believe that we can help the world drink better, and with 125 billion cups we would like to offer, this is a meaningful impact. But this tea needs to be sourced thinking about the planet. So it starts with nature restorative practices that we will be talking a little bit further down this presentation, climate positive value chain cradle to shelf, as well as waste-free supply chain. And we're proud to say that we are very close to reaching 100% of plant-based tea bags as our link to using plants to regenerate and build a more circular economy. And by achieving our well-being and planet goals, it will give us much better opportunity to share the value and improve livelihoods and start building thriving communities. So this is really a cycle, regenerative cycle of our growth. And this is now taking us to an example, a case study, moving to Kenya and the estates and the overall landscape where we are starting this journey, where we started this journey, and in fact would like to share with you our thinking towards the future. So thinking about biodiversity, one of the first things we are doing is elimination of pesticides, which is a bit easier in Africa due to the climate and elevation, but nonetheless, we employ science and nature to help us eliminate it completely by end of 24. You'll see trichoderma as a kind of natural vaccine for tea, which helps to eliminate some of the diseases, combined with conservation and biological weed control. This will help us free this whole ecosystem from pesticides within a relatively short span of time. We also look at organic crops, organic practice for tea. This year, we've qualified 400 hectares of certified organic tea garden as a model to create the model of how organic cultivation could be practiced at scale. And we know that organic comes with some of the trade-offs. So really creating a future roadmap and finding a right role for this practice is key. We see initially that soil health is improving, and therefore this could play a very significant role in the future. But really thinking about it holistically, we see that 73% of greenhouse emissions within tea comes from fertilizers. So actually looking at neutralizing fertilizer impact will be absolutely critical. And organic plays a role in there as long as we can provide low carbon, local, circular solution for organic fertilizers. Until that point, we are looking at new generation organomineral and low carbon solutions combined with digital and precision agriculture to year on year reduce total agrochemical input. And at this point, I would like to show you one video with targeted application which reduces this agrochemical use by several fold. So over to the video. Thank you. And on this journey, we continue with sustainable intensification of the crop using digital method. And in fact, we're implementing now a new platform where operators at the tea estates will be able to use live digital data regarding health of the crop, optimal time of harvest, and overall throughput planning. And this is something which allows us today reduce the agrochemical inputs up to 10% and further increase the yields by 3 to 5% year on year. So supported by science and technology, we move into the next stage of our transformation, which is breeding. So if we want to improve yields, drought tolerance, quality, and therefore reduce the pressure on land, we need to rely on novel breeding methods. And over the last 20 plus years, we have improved the yield by 40%, qualifying 32 new clones for tea, which helps us build a resilient and more efficient operation. In addition to that, we also committed a huge study together with Crop Trust of mapping genetic diversity of tea. Using 14 locations around the world, we actually mapped the total genetic material, and we believe 95% of the total genetic wealth of this crop could be contained within 100 accessions. So we're looking for partners to secure it, to make sure that this crops is safe for generations. Now, from biodiversity of tea alone, we take it to the next level, which is the ecosystem and landscape. And it happens so that in Kericho, we neighbor Mau Forest, one of the 5 water towers in East Africa, feeding rivers, lakes, and places like Serengeti, which are fully dependent on maintaining integrity of this ecosystem. And through the partnership of IDH and other companies and NGOs within the region, we are able to protect, rehabilitate, and restore this natural ecosystem, which is neighboring with tea, which in the future becomes a pesticide-free, a greener crop, and therefore creates an ecosystem which is truly regenerative. So bringing this all together, I think those are the steps and inputs supported by science, technology, and a lot of determination of building nature restorative system, fostering biodiversity, improving soil health, restoring ecosystems, as well as climate positive crop, not neutralizing impact of fertilizer, improving yield in natural way, and building renewable energy for direct operations and dependent communities. So just an example of how we bring it together. And we are not there yet, so this is really a step on the journey. In order for this impact to really last and create a sustainable business model, we also need to think about the power of brands. The brands that play critical role engaging consumers, customers, and different stakeholders around the world, not only in the upstream operations. And I would like to use 4 simple examples of the brands, activist brands playing their purpose. With the first one, Tazo, the brand which has just launched new regenerative range of products. And in addition to that, finds purposeful ways engaging communities in what we call tree corps, which is basically restoring urban ecosystems and giving employment to people who may have been marginalized. The second brand is Paka. Paka brings together traditional medicine with organic and naturally sourced from the wild ingredients, testified by Fair Wild, B Corp, and 1% for the Planet certification. Thirdly, something closer home, PG Tips, the first brand at scale that launched fully plant-based tea bags containing 100% certified tea, and now without any plastic overwrap on its pack, kind of leading the way in this circular regenerative thinking. Last but not least, the global brand Lipton, which is there to scale, democratize, and lead this impact at much larger base. The brand which started and pioneered sustainable sourcing back in 2006, and now it's a key engine of our plans to build the next stage of the journey towards regenerative. And that's it. So coming to a closing reflection, we are a corporate startup. Being the largest tea company, we are still very small. And in order to create the right impact, we rely on a lot of collaborations, partnerships of like-minded companies. I would like to share a big thank you for all their passion, inspiration, commitment, and investment jointly with us to achieve some of the milestones. But more importantly, I would like to use this forum to also expand the invitation We don't know it all. We cannot do it alone. So a real plea to engage, create new alliances for planet positive, plant-based business as we are. And with that, I would like to invite you to a short video which brings this journey together, hopefully even more inspiring way than I was able to do. So thank you for your attention, and over to the video.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your presentation and for that video. That was, I loved it. It's very inspiring, very upbeat. So thank you for sharing that. Now we do have time for a Q&A session. So we're just going to jump right in, kind of off the back of some of the topics you discussed in your presentation today, and a little bit about your kind of background and experience. So I wanted to start off to talk about your kind of 13 years experience in vertically integrated businesses. And I wondered if you could kind of share with us what are the benefits and drawbacks to operate as a vertically integrated business, obviously in the context of ESG and impact management?
Thank you. First, starting from the personal reflection, it's the most inspiring place to be for the R&D and ESG professional, combining science, nature, and the kind of building sustainable, in the future, regenerative food chains, because you basically tackle the whole area all the way from the soil to the sip, as we call it in tea. And it is a huge responsibility, because if you think about the footprint and all the issues and opportunities you face in agricultural operations around the world, it's a huge commitment. It's not an easy task, and those are the tasks which span decades, many years of commitments before you really see tangible results. So that's definitely something you need to bear in mind. But the positive part about it, besides a huge commitment, is actually understanding the opportunities, being directly engaged with the opportunities to improve the system, and actually knowing what's possible, what's realistic, daring but realistic. And therefore, when we look at sourcing other crops or different parts of tea crops from around the world, we can engage with other suppliers, we can create meaningful discussions, we can share best practices, and jointly try to move the industry in the right direction.
Fantastic. And I love how optimistic and positively you're kind of talking about this. It really does shine a good light on, what we need to do for the future. I wanted to ask kind of, where does all this hope come from, and what are your biggest concerns and challenges when you think about these goals and how you need to achieve them?
My hope starting from the hope part, my hope goes to science and nature. And I genuinely believe that we are at the beginning of the huge revolution in agriculture, where technology and science can play incredibly powerful role. And just looking at the progress achieved in the last 2 to 5 years, one cannot miss the opportunities, things that could be applied. So that's the hope, and seeing seeds of positive progress, or maybe green shoots, using our language, is something to look at. But it could be on the other side. It is quite overwhelming if you look at the scale of the transition required, the dependence on regulations, governments, but also creating a shared approach to our consumers, and through different parties involved in the industry, finding a platform which can truly help us invest in the right things, share value in an appropriate way. And we are not there, and this is again work plan for the next couple of decades. So yes, there is hope, but there is amount of challenges is huge, and that's why partnerships, working alone, will take us nowhere. Really, ability to partner, ability to form alliances and coalitions to drive progress will be absolutely key.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like you said, sustainability is one of the industries where it's, the consumers have a say, the brands and corporations, pretty much every industry touches into sustainability. I kind of wanted to ask, what is the role of brands when it comes to kind of driving these ESG agendas and impact goals?
It is critical. It's a kind of, in a way, easy question, but maybe not a easy answer in all cases. But I think the key point is that engaging consumers and customers around the world is absolutely key. No one can really drive a sustainable investment and impact without having this support, traction, and awareness of the consumer. So on one side, brands, powerful brands, can do a lot in terms of education and helping changing the behavior. So not only building on existing trends and habits, but actually they have a role to help consumers drink better, choose better, and live more sustainably. And for the business, those would be the engines of and the catalyzer of this positive change, and creating sustainable investment in the total value chain. So incredibly powerful role, and with some examples we shared which are positive, but also with many challenges ahead where we need to get even better, and working with really brilliant people to help do even better job.
Yeah, and we kind of just have a few more questions coming in that I'd like to kind of touch on is when we talk about sustainability, we often talk about the future and we have a lot of goals set out for us. I wondered if you could kind of share maybe how the pipeline of those goals have maybe changed over the past few years. We had obviously COVID and we had some sustainability. We had COP26, raising big topics. And just disruptions across the last few years. I wondered, have your goals kind of been sped up? Were any of these catalysts to reach your goals, or did they unfortunately slow down some of your ambitions?
So I think if we look at the short, medium-term impact of COVID, it wasn't incredibly disruptive in terms of pace of the goals, and I explain a little bit why. But overall, if you look at overall trend, I think we try to move from sustainable of reducing our impact to regenerative, which is about over time replenishing and creating a net positive effect on the system. And that's not something you can do in a day. So it's very important to recognize that it's a longer transition with a phase of building the platform's capabilities and over time transferring this into this net positive. So I think that's one change which is happening. I think that COVID created quite a bit of disruption in the value chain, in the supply chains, and disrupted, supply markets, let alone climate change. What it did provide is a acceleration of health-oriented consumer behaviors, and I think that in combination with crisis we faced in multiple parts of the world, I think the awareness of climate change is increasing. So actually trying to connect consumers to health and climate in the short term hopefully will give us a positive impulse, and our responsibility therefore would be to convert it to the value loop that goes back to livelihoods and communities.
Yeah. No, I think it's fascinating. Obviously, the kind of discussions we've been having at Sustainability Live, kind of a lot of topics around the past few years and collaboration. And you mentioned partnership and obviously the teams that you work with. I wondered if you could kind of expand on that a little bit more about kind of partnerships and how important it is that we are kind of, teamed together to try and achieve these sustainability goals.
Mhm. Yeah, so a hugely important topic. I think that many people in this forum would agree. I will go back to one example and the case study related to restoration and rehabilitation of Mau Forest in Kenya. The platform, which is gathered around IDH, but involves ekaterra, but also companies like Finley's, KTDA, and a number of other organizations, Rhino Arc, to mention a few. If you look at the risk and the kind of real damage that started affecting this rainforest, none of the companies or one single entity can tackle the issue. And in fact, if you want to rebuild, restore, but also create a sustainable landscape approach that lasts in the next few decades, you can only do it as a coalition, multiplying this impact. And those examples go to almost any social impact territory, any planet net zero commitments. If you don't have the full value chain partnerships lined up to things like new materials for plant-based biodegradable tea bags or any other climate solutions, it's none of the companies can afford it. So yeah, that's still a huge opportunity. And I think in the book Net Positive, there is a 1 + 1 = 11 kind of formula, which I think is quite amazing way of looking at kind of multiplying this impact.
Fantastic. Well, that is all we have time for today for your presentation. But I want to say a huge thank you for joining us. It's been incredibly fascinating, and it's great for you to kind of share your message and your positivity with us as well. So thank you.
Thanks to you, and thanks to all the people reaching out on LinkedIn and trying to connect and share questions, inspiration, and challenges with us. So off to a great rest of the event.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us here at the virtual stage at Sustainability Live London. We hope you're enjoying yourself, but don't go anywhere because we have many more speaker sessions coming up shortly.